Welcome to the deep dive. We're taking a bit of a different path today.
Yeah, just a bit.
One of you sent in a really, well, unique piece of source material. It's a transcript from a hypnotherapy session.
Mm.
And it explores some pretty fascinating ideas around mantras, their nature, their effects.
Right. And it's definitely a departure from, the usual scientific studies we might look at.
Exactly.
But that's kind of what makes this interesting, doesn't it? This deep dive is, it's different.
For sure. And we should be really clear up front.
Yeah.
We're not here to say this transcript is like fact or fiction. Not at all.
No. The goal is really just to explore the concepts inside it, what it suggests about mantras.
Right. Their power, maybe how they're supposed to work, what the implications might be, according to this one source.
Think of it as us sort of walking through a very specific and, pretty unusual thought landscape someone described under hypnosis.
Couldn't said it better. So our mission today, let's just dig into these ideas from the transcript. See what sparks your curiosity, maybe give you a few of those aha or even wait what moments.
Okay, sounds good. Where does it start?
Okay, so the transcript kicks off with Miriam. She is the one under hypnosis focusing on the sound
The classic.
Right. And her initial experience is very visual. She sees as a kind of portal.
A portal. How does she describe that?
Well, she perceives the O sound as like transporting her somewhere. It moves her.
Oh.
And then the M sound that feels expansive, like it's opening things up around her.
Huh. So right away, you get this dynamic sense of sound doing something physically almost, moving and expanding.
Exactly. And it gets even more intricate. She then visualizes this holographic clockwork mechanism.
Clockwork, like gears and...
Yeah, like the inside of an old Swiss watch, maybe, but holographic.
Wow.
And in this vision, all the different vowel and consonant sounds are interacting, like tiny parts of this machine.
Okay, I think I'm picturing it.
And these interactions, the way she sees it, they create specific vibrational sound that actually open doors and portals.
Portals again. So the idea is specific sounds are like keys, unlocking things.
That seems to be the core concept right there. Sounds as keys to different states, maybe different levels of awareness.
And it connects to the idea of sound frequency, right? Certain frequencies unlocking certain states, or, as the transcript says, different consciousnesses.
Right. And crucially, it's not passive. The transcript emphasizes that the consciousness of the person using the mantra...
The activator.
Yeah, the activator. Their consciousness directs where these sounds, these frequencies, actually lead.
So intention is key. It's not just making the noise.
Seems so. Okay, so moving on from just the transcript then looks at how mantra recitation might affect our mental and energetic bodies.
Right. What does Miriam observe there? Especially in group settings.
She notes that when groups are chanting, their mental state seems to shift. It goes into this sort of pre-sleep, almost an alpha wave state.
Okay, that aligns a bit with what we know about meditation, right? Slowing down brain waves.
It does. So a key idea here is definitely mantras potentially altering our mental state, inducing relaxation.
And the transcript suggests this relaxation can even lead to maybe losing full conscious awareness, a kind of surrender.
Yeah, that's the implication. And this slowing down, it's not just mental. It's described as affecting all fields of a person, mental, emotional, energetic. The whole system relaxes.
Interesting. And that leads into this concept of the egregor, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. This is a really interesting bit. During group recitation, this egregor forms.
Which is described as...
Yeah.
What, exactly? A shared energy.
Kind of. A shared energetic entity created by the group's collective focus, their intention, the vibrations they're making together.
Like a group energy field taking on its own form.
Pretty much. And the idea of a collective consciousness or a shared field isn't totally alien in some circles.
True. Does it describe how it forms?
Yeah, it gets specific. It says the solar plexus, emotional, and even sexual energy centers of the participants align. And this alignment contributes to the egregor taking shape. First, it's apparently just like a shapeless ball of energy.
Right, just raw energy.
But then this energy ball seems to condense, to intensify, and eventually it surrounds the whole group.
Like a bubble.
Exactly like that. An energetic dome, it calls it.
An energetic dome. Wow. And inside this dome?
Even more structure appears. They form geometric figures, apparently through energetic links connecting the participants within the dome.
Geometric figures. So it's not just a vague cloud of energy. There's a pattern emerging. Like resonance.
Seems like it. A very visual, structured way to describe a group energy thing.
Okay, so what happens within this dome with these connections?
This leads to the next idea. Inside the dome, everyone's individual. Well, their fantasies, needs, desires, they all become interconnected.
Interconnected, like shared thoughts.
Maybe more like shared feeling states. And this culminates in what the transcript calls a state of group hypnosis.
Group hypnosis. Okay, so that implies heightened suggestibility, right?
Yeah. That's definitely the implication. Shared intention, shared energy, leading to this altered state where suggestion might be more powerful.
And this raises questions about the leader's role, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The transcript describes the leader as being able to kind of direct this egregor.
Steer the group energy.
Yeah. And in doing so, they can influence what people experience. It calls them hallucinations.
Hallucinations like...
Seeing figures like Buddha or Jesus or even deceased loved ones, but described as holograms.
Holograms. Interesting. And crucially, these visions are aligned with what the individuals personally expect or want to see.
Ah, so it ties back to individual belief and expectation, even within the group field.
Exactly. So the session frames this whole thing as a ritual.
A ritual with a purpose.
Yeah, the goal being to connect people not just with their own energy or the group's egregor, but also the egregores of others.
Like a deliberate exercise in merging consciousness through sound and intention. That's a good way to put it. It's a potent picture. Focused group energy plus individual expectations, potentially shaping subjective reality within that shared field.
Definitely potent.
Okay.
So where does it go from there? Because I have a feeling it gets stranger.
Oh, it does. Okay, here's where the transcript really takes a turn into, well, some pretty unusual territory.
I'm ready.
It then describes the leader of this ritual actually evoking reptilian beings.
Reptilian beings. Okay. Evoked intentionally.
Apparently, yes. It's not presented as random. These entities are described as having a connection to the leader's rituals already.
So pre-existing relationship is suggested.
Seems like it. This is definitely where the narrative goes deep into the esoteric.
No kidding. And these entities, what do they do?
They're described as entering that energetic dome we talked about.
Uh-huh.
They observe the participants. Some apparently have their eyes open, some closed. And it says they use the reptilian eyes to influence or shape what the participants see.
Shape what they see. Like projecting images based on those expectations we mentioned.
That's the implication. But then comes maybe the most striking claim.
Go on.
These entities are described as actually feeding on the energy of the participants.
Feeding on their energy.
Yeah. And the leader, in contrast, is portrayed quite differently, possibly lacking something called essence.
Lacking essence. What does that mean?
The transcript suggests this lack allows them to manage the ritual almost like running a computer program.
A program for what purpose?
To feed these beings. Beings from another reality, it implies.
So it's presented as an energetic transaction.
Exactly. And interestingly, the transcript notes these beings aren't described as inherently good or bad.
Just hungry.
Basically, just beings with a need to feed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a key idea here is this very specific concept of energetic exchange with non-human entities.
Well, that's certainly a notion that shifts the perspective on chanting circles. It introduces this transactional, maybe unsettling element.
Unsettling is a good word. It's definitely a different view. Okay, so then the transcript starts getting into specific mantras.
Beyond just Om.
Right. It identifies Praja, and Shas, S-A-S-S, with Asidia, maybe pronounced Shas, as being particularly powerful. These three are said to open the main door of that holographic clockwork mechanism we visualized earlier.
The main door?
Yeah.
So like master keys. A hierarchy of mantras.
That's how it seems to categorize them. These three are presented as fundamental access codes to this whole energetic system.
Interesting. Does it go deeper into the types of mantras?
It does. It goes way back. It describes an even older form of communication, using sounds described as completely reptilian.
Completely reptilian sound.
Or maybe it clarifies more like draconian. Think large, dark-skinned beings, elongated skulls.
Okay, that's a specific image.
And it even gives examples like Seom Kamam. Gani-o, S-C-O-M-C-A-O-M-A-O-M.
Seon Kamam. And how are these sounds produced?
Described as being communicated from the abdomen, not the throat or mouth.
From the abdomen.
Huh. And these sounds are linked to ancient beings referred to as geneticists.
Geneticists.
Yeah, who supposedly came to Earth long ago.
Yes.
So this layers in a very ancient, potentially non-human element to the origin of some mantras.
Right. That ties into certain alternative history narratives, doesn't it? The ancient astronaut or non-human influence idea. The abdomen communication detail is really specific, though.
It is. Then there's a specific mantra mentioned that's associated with Ganesh, the Hindu deity with the elephant head.
Okay. Ganesh, what about that one?
This one is flagged as potentially dangerous.
Dangerous. How so?
Reciting it, according to the transcript, is said to open up a low astral dimension.
Okay. And the consequence?
This could allow what it calls discarnate entities, beings without bodies, to be directed.
Corrected to do what?
To attack and feed on people.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty stark warning attached to a specific mantra.
Definitely. And it even interprets the elephant head of Ganesh as being a kind of mask.
A mask for what?
Or a reptilian being.
Right. So this really drives home the idea that not all mantras in this view are benign.
Yep.
Some might have negative effects or open undesirable connections.
Exactly. It suggests some sounds might open doors you don't want opened. The idea of a low astral dimension is something you hear in some esoteric circles.
And how does it explain why some are dangerous?
It links the dangerousness to the ancient energetic content embedded within the sounds themselves.
Oh, so the vibration carries an old energy signature, basically.
Seems to be the idea. And it connects these sounds to incredibly old civilizations in India, but also Turkey.
Older than known history.
Yeah, predating recorded human civilizations. It even hints they might have used things like nuclear energy way back then.
Nuclear energy. Okay.
Yeah.
And these civilizations were
Made up of beings who, again, look humanish but had elongated heads.
the elongated skulls again?
Yeah, and they were reptilian in nature, lived underground. And the transcript suggests humanity has some level of hybridization with these beings.
Hybridization, right? So this is weaving a very complex, very speculative hidden history narrative. Underground reptilian civilizations, ancient tech, human origins.
It really expands the scope, doesn't it? It's a whole cosmology built around these sounds and beings.
Definitely a cosmology. Okay, so after covering these specific, powerful, or dangerous mantras, where does the transcript go?
It shifts to the idea of subliminal mantra practice, like maybe not even consciously chanting, but being exposed to them.
Subliminal exposure. And the effects.
Said to lead to a loss of connection with the physical world, a movement of energies, the opening of portals again, and combinations happening within that Swiss clock mechanism.
So even passive exposure could trigger this system.
That's the suggestion. And this could potentially lead to contact with that ancient underground civilization we mentioned.
Right.
Or even other dimensions where, our linear concepts of past, present, future don't apply.
Nonlinear time. Okay.
And it even suggests this practice could somehow give life to or evoke these entities onto Earth.
Evoke them into our reality.
Yeah, potentially leading to something like possession. So, yeah, we're moving into some pretty intense potential consequences here.
No kidding. Subliminal influence, time distortion, evocation, possession. These are heavy concepts being linked to mantra sounds.
Very heavy. The transcript then throws in a detail about depictions. It mentions these beings sometimes being shown with bluish skin in later Indian art like Krishna.
Ah, Krishna, often depicted blue.
Right. But it claims they were originally dark blue-skinned reptiles.
Okay, another specific visual claim.
Then, very interestingly, it brings up studies. Supposedly, studies show a mantra effect even on people who don't believe in them.
Non-believers are affected. How?
Or even people who aren't actively participating. And it attributes this to our reptilian brain.
The oldest part of the brain, the brainstem complex.
Exactly. The idea is that this part of us has a connection with these vibrations because of that suggested reptilian primate hybridization in our ancestry.
So it bypasses conscious belief and triggers something deeper.
That's the claim. It triggers a hypnotic state, a sense of evocation, almost like a primal ancestral reflex. Like a baby's instinctual cry, it compares it to.
Wow, so suggesting a very deep, maybe even biological resonance with certain sounds, regardless of belief. That's a significant claim.
It really is. It frames it as biological and ancestral.
Which then leads to the question of manipulation, right?
Right.
If non-believers can be affected.
Exactly. The transcript addresses this. It suggests whether non-practitioners can be manipulated depends on their predisposition.
Their mindset going in.
Kind of. It says if you have expectations wanting something to happen, perhaps that can open portals to the egregor.
Ah, the expectation creates the opening.
But if you have no particular expectation, you might just experience it as sound, maybe enter a meditative state, get some energetic regeneration, like listening to the ocean.
So our internal state, our intention or lack thereof, acts as a filter or determines the effect.
That seems to be the idea presented. A neutral state might be protective, while expectation opens the door.
Okay. What about the way mantras are sounded? Does it Differentiate.
Yes, it brings up gutturalized mantras, those deep, throaty sounds. These, it suggests, have a very direct connection to that ancient reptilian civilization's way of communicating.
The abdominal sounds.
Possibly linked to that, yeah. They're said to activate something very primitive in us, connect us with beings that supposedly still exist, hidden.
So specific vocal techniques tapping into specific old energies.
Right. It calls it their language, originating from the abdomen. And it supposedly creates different energy movements compared to, say, natural sounds like the sea or drumming.
So the quality of the sound matters intensely in this view, not just any sound.
Seems so. The way it's vocalized is key.
And these beings, this connection, is it just linked to India?
No, the transcript broadens it out. It says these same blue beings, the reptiles, are connected to practices in Tibet, too.
Tibet.
And various other traditions, presumably mostly in that region. And the intention, it claims, behind keeping this language, these mantras, active.
Yes. What's the stated intention?
Is to provide sustenance, food, for these beings.
Sustenance again. Feeding them.
Both the ones supposedly living underground and others in different dimensions. Beings who are still present, it says, and can easily come through these opened portals.
So it paints a picture of an ongoing, maybe even global, energetic relationship maintained through sound, spanning cultures and dimensions, driven by this need for sustenance.
That's a good summary of the picture it paints, a continuous energetic exchange.
Okay. Does it mention any other specific mantras?
Yes, the mantra Har, H-A-R.
Har. What about that one?
Described as a very guttural sound, and it's said to be the specific communication method of, well, get this, tall beings, like 4 meters tall.
4 meters. That's huge.
Yeah, with elongated skulls again, and draconian-like reptilian features.
Draconian-like. Okay, and this har sound connects to them specifically.
That's the claim. Miriam, under hypnosis, apparently perceives herself in a jungle valley in India. There's a hidden stone temple, and this is described as a place where these beings live underground and emerge.
Emerge from underground.
And this place, this dimension she's seeing, isn't the current Earth dimension, according to the transcript.
So another dimension intersecting ours, accessed or related to this specific sound.
Exactly. It takes us right into other dimensions linked to specific sounds.
And what's the implication of using these sounds, like har?
The transcript suggests that continuing to emulate these mantras, especially with guides who know how,
Yes.
it facilitates connection and interrelation with these dimensions and beings.
So practicing strengthens the link.
Right. And it proposes something even more complex, that many people currently living on Earth are actually these beings existing in another space-time.
Wait, people alive now are these beings?
In essence, yes.
Okay.
And the mantras help them reconnect with a part of themselves, their origin. It uses the term avatars.
Avatars, like they're experiencing a human life but have this other essence.
That's the idea. And the leaders of these practices, they apparently know they're opening these doors, this clockwork mechanism,
They know what they're doing.
and have for generations, it claims. The whole mechanism is even compared to astrology
Astrology.
as a system of control, manipulating a fractal of humanity's perceived reality.
Wow, okay, that's a layered and a quite conspiratorial view.
Yeah.
Generational knowledge, avatars,
Yeah.
reality manipulation.
It's definitely intricate. And these beings, the transcript says, aren't really interested in being directly perceived by us as they are.
Why not?
Because they exist in simultaneous realities, it's just not their focus. Mantras, then, act as a kind of bridge.
A bridge between.
What it calls the mammalian reality, us, presumably, and the reptilian reality. They open portals.
Portals which aren't inherently good or bad.
Right. The portals themselves are neutral, just connections. However,
Uh-oh.
interference can occur, and it's accepted by those involved.
Accepted. Why?
Because they gain something in return. There's an exchange.
An exchange based on.
Ancient contracts and agreements, it says. And many practitioners, especially leaders perhaps, are said to belong to these groups, these lineages.
Belong to them.
Yeah.
Ancestrally.
It seems so. It distinguishes between leaders who lack that essence. We mentioned they just replicate the rituals.
Right, the program runner.
And others who belong to the clan. These ones are incarnated here, but their essence is also connected underground, maintaining these old contracts.
Okay, so some leaders are just technicians, others are insiders, maintaining ancient pacts.
That's the picture. And the level of conscious awareness of these contracts varies.
Some know, some don't.
Some apparently choose unconsciousness about it. Why? To benefit from the energy exchange with their reptilian origins.
Their tribe or family of origin, as it puts it.
Exactly. It paints this picture of a hidden network, a complex web of agreements, identities, and energy flows.
Very complex.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to genetics or biology?
It notes that while our physical DNA might be different, it's the reptilian hybridization in the brain that gets activated by the mantras.
Back to the reptilian brain connection.
Yeah, and these individuals who belong, they're said to exist both here on Earth and there simultaneously.
Like duplicates in different realities.
That's the description, almost like quantum entanglement, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And people who just recreate the rituals without belief.
Without them.
They still connect, but just with their own primal reptilian brain aspect, not necessarily the whole lineage thing.
Okay, so there's the distinction between those who are part of these original groups.
Yeah, people born in specific places like Tibet or India, part of ashrams maybe, and those who just tap into that primal brain response through the sounds.
Got it. Does it comment on places like India specifically?
It does. It observes India's perceived intense spirituality existing alongside, well, significant physical limitations or poverty.
And it attributes this to?
The constant use of mantras. Opening portals constantly, it suggests, to lower astral frequencies and these connected worlds.
Creating an overall energetic environment.
Yeah, described as an energetic dome over the region with many hybridizations. It's offering a very specific and potentially controversial energetic interpretation of a culture.
Definitely a specific lens. What about comparing mantras to other religious practices, like prayer?
Interestingly, it claims there's no fundamental difference.
No difference between mantras and prayers.
Not in their potential function, anyway. Both, it suggests, can open portals and connect individuals with entities.
Entities.
Yes.
Of various kinds, presumably.
Right. And it sees the stigmatization of mantras in some other religions as just a form of manipulation, trying to control which portals get opened, maybe.
So any externalized sound practice group or individual leads to connection and portal opening.
That's the claim. It essentially gives permission for access, whether you realize it or not.
And how does one avoid this, according to the transcript?
It suggests it requires a lack of unconscious connection to these specific beings or portals. Meaning, if you're drawn to mantras in the first place, you likely already have such a connection, maybe from that ancestral hybridization or lineage.
So the attraction itself is a sign of connection.
That's the implication. And it suggests alternatives for just relaxation if you want to avoid these potential connections.
Like what?
Nature sounds, birdsong, things without this specific, ancient, potentially loaded energetic content.
Okay. What about listening to recorded mantras? Does that count?
Yes. Same effect as live recitation, it claims.
Yeah.
Connects you with the egregors, leads to an energy exchange.
So even passive listening isn't neutral in this view.
Doesn't seem to be. Okay, then it looks at individual practice versus group practice.
Right. What's the difference there?
With individual practice, it describes two types of people again.
Okay.
There are those who are essentially reliving contact with these beings, possibly because, as mentioned, they're one of them having a human experience.
Reconnecting with their origin.
Yeah, and then there are others who just relax. They get the calming effect without that deep, resonant connection.
So it depends on the individual's background or essence, maybe.
Seems so. Group practice, though, that's described differently.
How?
It's said to create energetic codependency.
Codependency, like needing the group energy.
Exactly. A recurring need to reunite, to chant together, forming these clans, it calls them, often with ancestral ties activated by the ritual itself.
Activated by the ritual. Reinforcing those ancient contracts, maybe.
That seems to fit the narrative. And escaping this codependency
Is it possible?
requires conscious awareness, it says, and a conscious decision to disconnect, even if there's a real soul connection in another space-time.
So you have to actively choose to break the pattern.
Right. And this situation creates interference. Individuals are described as being both the interferer and the interfered with.
Interfere and interfered with. How?
Maybe interfering with their own authentic path by maintaining this connection. It's not framed as good or bad, just limiting.
Limiting connection to their authentic essence, their own creative power.
Exactly. They choose this experience, this limitation, until they either die or awaken, have a conscious shift.
So it emphasizes choice, awareness, and the potential for both connection And maybe unintended limitation in these practices.
Precisely. It's a very nuanced, if strange, picture.
Okay. Wow. Is there more?
There's one more major section. Miriam makes contact with a specific entity, an entity named Hashpa, H-A-S-H-P-A, described as female from a different but simultaneous dimension. Possibly ancient Egypt is hinted at.
Ancient Egypt. Okay. And what's Hashpa like?
Apparently she finds humans amusing.
Amusing. Why?
Our lack of direct perception, our belief that we're separate from other realities. She apparently states that these realities coexist. Simultaneously, we just don't see it.
So she confirms the simultaneous realities idea.
Yes. And she talks about the clockwork mechanism, the sounds, the mantras.
What does she say about
that it's basically a tool, a way for humans to activate portals to contact beings like her, because we've lost or don't use abilities like natural telepathy or dematerialization.
So the sounds are like training wheels for interdimensional contact.
Kind of, yeah. Ashba says her intention alone is enough to open portals from her side. But humans, we've chosen to limit our energetic freedom.
We've limited ourselves.
Yeah. And she says the connection exists anyway because we are also you. That interconnectedness again.
We are also you. That's profound. Suggests a fundamental unity beneath the apparent separation.
It does. Hashpa goes on to say that humans kind of miss their origin deep down.
Miss where we came from.
Yeah. And so these ancient sounds, when we use them, are welcomed. They facilitate connection.
Does she say she benefits directly, like the feeding idea earlier?
She claims no direct benefit for herself, but she describes a mutual co-alimentation.
Co-alimentation, shared nourishment.
Exactly. Humans access energy they believe they need for interconnection, which beings like her provide through this link.
Okay.
And this strengthens the connection, especially since she claims many of them are currently incarnated as humans.
Reinforcing the avatar idea.
Right. She does acknowledge this creates dependency. It can limit our own creative power.
But she sees it as
a chosen experience. Part of the deal of being on Earth, which she calls a place of much experimentation. Often chosen, she implies, because we lack awareness of our own ability to freely create reality.
So we rely on external connections because we forget our internal power.
That seems to be her perspective. Then she departs, expressing joy for the interaction. It reinforces that theme of chosen experience, complex energy exchange, potential support, but also potential limitation.
A very different perspective, coming seemingly directly from one of these other beings. Fascinating.
Absolutely. Okay, so finally, the transcript wraps up by offering a definition of mantra.
And what is it, according to this source?
Linked specifically to a communication form of beings who predated humans on Earth.
The non-terrestrial reptiles again.
Yes, who inhabited Earth and contributed to human hybridization. That's the stated origin.
Right. Very specific.
And then it does a quick analysis of some specific sounds or mantra components.
It's like a breakdown.
Yeah. Om is primary, encompassing the beginning.
Okay.
Sounds linked to Egypt, reptiles, water reptiles, aquatic beings. Da linked to a solar god. Sa to wind, sand, the universe, principle.
Broad concepts.
The Eye of Ra, specifically. Har, we heard that one linked to reptiles, anchoring, Earth.
Right, the draconian one.
J linked to procreation, hybridization, genetics. Guru linked to parasitization.
Ooh, that's a loaded one.
Yeah. PME to Earth. Orni to platforms outside Earth, like space stations.
Extraterrestrial structure.
All these are described as parts of the clockwork mechanism. Portals, keywords, origins leading to diverse universes, with Om being the main one.
It's like a code book for this mechanism.
Pretty much. And it notes similarities to ancient languages and how concepts of God in some traditions might actually refer back to these original geneticist beings.
Reinterpreting religious concepts through this lens.
Exactly. Ganesh is linked again to the pineal gland, opening low vibrational planes, discarnate entities. Krishna to principle, energy, the dome.
Reinforcing earlier points.
And it states that basically any vibration can become a mantra.
Oh, wow.
Defined by the evoker's intention, the consonant-vowel composition, and the vibration produced. The effect depends on the sound itself and the power of engagement, abdomen, and throat.
So, intention plus sound structure plus vocal power effect.
That seems to be the formula presented. It really tries to lay out a framework.
Okay. Does it offer any final thoughts on how to navigate this?
It does. It mentions similar humane practices that aren't necessarily about conducting these entities.
Like what?
listening to nature sounds, like we said, or using certain simple consonant-vowel sounds just for relaxation, like humming,
Separating the intent and the complex structure.
and maybe separating the guttural quality. It suggests that can shift the effect. Some words just emit portal-opening vibrations, others, like relaxing sounds, don't.
Interesting distinction. What about things like tongue placement?
It mentions tongue placement and vibrating it on the palate, described as a reptilian practice, connects to the reptilian brain, can potentially open portals, but isn't always about communication with ancestors or entities.
So it's a technique with potential effects.
Right. And connecting with our own reptilian aspect, which it says we all have, isn't inherently bad.
Okay.
Voluntary contact with this ancestral part of ourselves is possible without external means or entities. The key, it stresses, is what and with whom you are connecting. Discernment.
Discernment seems crucial in this entire narrative.
Absolutely. It concludes by suggesting connecting with our primal self through lower energy centers, feet, legs, and the instinctive reptilian brain, maybe via that tongue placement, can be ways to connect with our own essence without involving external entities.
So grounding and internal connection as an alternative.
Yeah. The ending really emphasizes knowing yourself, your intention, and being discerning about the energies you engage with.
A powerful note to end on, considering everything else discussed.
Definitely. So to try and recap this,
Wow.
this incredibly deep dive into a truly unique source.
Yeah, unique is the word.
We've explored these really intricate and, let's be honest, for many, probably surprising perspectives on mantras, as presented in this one hypnotherapy session. Visualizing energetic mechanics like a holographic clockwork.
Right, the portals, the keys.
The possibility of connections to other dimensions, other beings, including these reptilian entities.
Which is a major and potentially controversial element.
Absolutely. And that really thought-provoking idea of an inherent reptilian aspect within humanity itself that might resonate with these very ancient sounds.
It's a lot to take in. And again, it's so important we stress this.
Please do.
This entire exploration, everything we've talked about, it's based solely on the content of this one very specific, very unusual transcript.
Right. It's one narrative from one session.
Exactly. We really encourage you, our listener, please consider these ideas as, well, fascinating possibilities maybe. A very unique lens to think about sound, intention, consciousness.
But not as definitive truth, not as an established fact, just food for thought.
Precisely. Just food for thought.
And that brings us, I guess, to our final thought for you today. Given these perspectives, how might we reconsider the power of sound in our own lives? How might our intentions shape our experiences? And what do you make of these ideas about potential connections to unseen realms, or maybe even to our own inner ancient aspects?
Yeah. What specifically from all this actually resonates with you? Or what pushes back?
We would absolutely love to hear your thoughts. Any follow-up questions you might have on this one?
It's certainly given us a lot to chew on.
It really has. Thanks for diving deep with us today.